let's see how our float bowl is doing. It is a lot darker in there than it was yesterday. Considerable improvement. Okay, everybody, it took a lot of cleaning, but we got it. We did all the same steps as before, other than soaking this in the Evapo-Rust for about a day and a half. Thorough sandblasting on the inside. We found a lot of really deep pits in there, but we got all the nasty stuff out. Lapped this surface as well, just like with the other part. And the Frank's Red Hot, we threw it in. I'll put it in here on the air side. I won't put it in here on the fuel side. Okay, air side, it doesn't bother me that much. And if the bowl vent actually has to dribble some down through there, that little bit's never going to hurt it. I'd like to have, or I'd rather have a coating in there to keep any kind of moisture from attacking that freshly sandblasted material. So rather than leave it raw. So that's why we did all of that. So, for the most part, I guess I'm impressed with it. The packing seat back here is rustier than I would like, but we're gonna try it and see how it acts. That's the best we can do with it right now. So, chased all the threaded holes. We have our good idle jet threaded hole intact. And this is actually another vent right here. That little brass puck is basically permanently installed. You can get them out if you want to destroy them, but as long as the passage that goes down to the base of the metering well hole is open, well, you pretty much leave them alone. So everything else here, good and clean, nice and open, so we can start the reassembly. So the first thing we're going to do, oh, a little bit of housekeeping from last time too. I forgot to pull the choke shaft retainer and the old felt seal out of the body from last time. So threw that in the sandblasting cabinet and said, oh yeah, it's in there. So we dug that out with a screwdriver. So my bad. All right, so we'll begin by putting the bottom drain, the overflow drain felt puck in there. So when we took this apart, it had nothing in there. So we throw that in place. That lets any excess gasoline that gets down in here run out, but it also prevents the carburetor from ingesting dirty air through that bottom area. We've got this Welsh plug with the little hole in the bottom that goes in against the step, and we will seat that in place with the hammer and the punch, just like we did this one here in the last episode. Same principle. The way that these have that hole in the center, you don't have to hit them very hard. They deform pretty easily. Yep, we're good. Next up, the metering nozzle. New one included in the kit. We've got the new gasket under the head. If you choose to reuse your old one, make sure all those tiny little holes are clear, as well as the hole down the center. And of course the plug for the backside that it threads into, new gasket on that as well. This plug was one of the pieces that was so stuck before, and when it's all clean, it just drops right in. So Nozzle goes down the center, threads into the plug. Cinch them both tight. Of course, we had to hold this one with the screwdriver this time. We weren't so lucky it wasn't stuck like before, so that looks good. The bowl drain now, we've got the seat. This is a pipe thread, so it's your choice if you want to put any sealer on the threads or not. And once that's tight, the drain petcock can go in. All right, so now we have the main jet goes in at the back, and that's the one where we had to dig that old packing out. So here's our packing nut, here's the jet, and here's the new modern rubber seal that replaces the packing. I still prefer the old packing, but you use what you can get nowadays. So I'm going to start the packing nut onto the jet quite a ways, and then we'll throw that new rubber seal onto the jet as well. And then all pieces will go in at the same time. Choke shaft up next. I showed you how to do this on the Farmall H carburetor, but we'll do it again on the M carb. So we've got the cup style retainer for the choke shaft seal. So that goes on first, and then the felt seal goes on the shaft right up to the retainer like that, and then we throw the shaft in. And it's easier to use the shaft as the driver for the retainer than it is to install that felt seal with the retainer, hammer it all in, and then try to push this choke shaft through the felt seal. All these square edges in here, we'll want to gouge material out of it. I found it's just easier to throw all this together at once. So we'll help that felt seal to get down into the hole, and then we'll tap it home. Just like that. Feel a slight little drag on that new seal. So that's how we want to do it. So we can take the detent spring, drop it in the pocket, and the detent ball goes right on top of it, and we can gently lift that choke shaft, roll the arm over the top, and there's the detent right there. So we just need to keep it under control until we can throw that butterfly on there. Tight, tight, looks good. So this little spring-loaded disc in here, that is to let the tractor pull some air in if it starts to fire and you still have the choke on and you're trying to get to the lever to flip it off. Okay, and this has a very strong detent on it. That's probably the most positive lock choke detent I've ever had on a IH carburetor. But yeah, when it starts, it'll start, pulling vacuum basically on the backside of that plate, and that little disc is just being held closed with that spring. So if it pulls enough vacuum, it unseats that disc, compresses the spring, and it can draw some air while it's going blub, 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 and then click, you pop the choke off, and boom, you're ready to run. So that's what that's all about. Next, or I should say last, our low-speed jet. I didn't want to put that in and risk breaking this new one off as well. So nothing special to do here. Start it in the hole and then very gently tighten it in. I've got another tool to show you all as well. So we'll finish the installation of the new jet first, and it doesn't have to be gorilla tight because there's nothing here to really act upon it to loosen it up, but they've got a very small screwdriver slot in the top, and it's pretty common to see one half of that body above the slot broken off on these, and they will still run if you've got one half of that screwdriver slot cracked off or the other. It'll still run just fine because the effective length of the jet is still the same. But to try to overcome that problem or prevent it, it's really easy to make a special tool. So when I was taking that jet out of our Farmall 300 parts carburetor, I had a scrap piece of steel. I drilled a 1/8 inch hole in it, and what you can do is slide that down over that jet, and you can see I added just a little bit extra screwdriver slot there with the Dremel so you can fit a bit wider screwdriver in. And what that does, it supports the upper portion of that jet on each side of that screwdriver slot, so if you have to really put a little bit extra torque on it, it keeps those two halves of that, or each side of that slot caged in, supports it, so you avoid cracking that out and you can possibly reuse that jet. So that's about all I had to say on that. I think it's time to throw the halves together. We've got the bottom half basically all assembled. Here's our throttle body / upper half. Here's our new gasket. You can throw that on just like that, and we're ready to go. So carefully, to avoid bending the float, we'll just guide it all together. Just like that. And we can flip it over. Because that new Venturi is ready to fall out of this throttle body because it's a proper fit again, we need to put the bowl onto the throttle body with the throttle body upside down. So 4 bolts hold the halves together. We'll get those thrown in real quick. All right, so it's looking pretty good. The last piece we have is the new fuel inlet fitting with the screen. Goes in right there. But before I put that in, there's one more thing we should probably do. Just like having a look at everything though. Okay. Stay tuned. A quick coat of International Harvester Red makes it look a lot better. This is just the Rust-Oleum paint. I just needed to get something on that sandblasted exterior because it wouldn't have been a good idea to bolt it back on an engine. Just completely raw metal all over. I also decided just to leave all the brass raw. I think that looks pretty good. So that means we can finish up with the fuel inlet fitting and gasket, and I'm going to leave this one loose because this showed up with no fitting on it. So I don't know what the owner of this tractor had on there before. So he has the option to cinch that in and use it if he chooses. So, all right. That concludes the rebuild of the Farmall M carburetor. Let's do this. Sits a lot better like that. Should have thought that through. So the only other thing I have initial settings: idle jet 1 turn out, main jet 3 turns out. That is enough to get the engine to fire and run, and then you fine tune adjust from there. So that concludes the Farmall M carburetor rebuild job. Pretty good set of episodes we got out of that, and another good thing to add to the playlists in the channel. So I hope you all enjoyed the viewing. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope to see y'all back again next time.